Hello, Story Seekers. I'm Ben.
I'm Nico, and welcome to the Tiny Bookcase. Right now, you're listening to our favourite part of the week.
Stories, discussion, and a high likelihood of gratuitous obscenities, all to sate the hunger of the bibliomancer Eusteris.
Regular listeners will know how it works, but for newcomers, Ben and I have both written a story to the same shared prompt.
We're about to share those stories with each other and you for the first time, then we'll workshop them on mic. The prompt for this episode is mug. So, Nico, mug me.
Mug. Mug was not, and had never been, at any stage, a flattering nickname. With age, it had garnered the connotation of being gullible, or perhaps simply an idiot. Malcolm Thurridge was not an idiot, and in fact had become less of one with age. What Malcolm was a victim of circumstance. Circumstance was not the name of the knife the other boy had been holding, but it is what had crossed their paths. A boy with dark hair, white, skinny. That was the description the older boy had. Malcolm matched it remarkably well, as would a good portion of any town in England. The older boy had a belly full of rage, and was looking to secure the closest thing he could to a familial bond, a group of men and other disenfranchised youngsters. A charitable way, and in fact Malcolm's way, of describing a gang. Malcolm had a belly full of fish fingers, which once it all began, he promptly vomited all over himself. His ears had always stuck out. A boy once told him he looked like the FA Cup. No girls had ever commented, at least to his face, but the lack of any kind of conversation whatsoever did a fair amount of explaining regardless. The older boy, who was asking to go by Killer with an A and an H on the end, but was in fact called Jeremy, had pointed out how ridiculous Malcolm's ears were. He never seemingly realised that had that been the boy they were actually after, they would have featured heavily in the description. Malcolm had never bought weed. He'd certainly never sold it. So when Killer started asking where the money was for the last lot, he quite rightly protested his innocence. Repeatedly. Even as Killer pressed ever harder, he did not falter, which is truly commendable. Killer did not see it that way. It is a terrible shame that when someone screams outside of a row of houses, those within generally have two thoughts. Thank goodness I'm in here where whatever that is isn't, and someone else will call the police. By the time someone did take action, the duct tape wrapped Stanley blade had carved one of Malcolm's large ears far enough off that doctors would later describe it as beyond saving. If two very large ears had been bad, just one very large ear was, in so many ways, far worse. He missed the days when people would ask, "How's Noddy?" And soon Mug had stuck. One handle, you see. Malcolm was a strong type, which will seem obvious to those who see him now. MP for Dagenham is a gruelling job. The previous MP was called a mug at such rapid speed for the length of his career that he didn't realise it was being chanted for an opponent. All the previous MP for Dagenham saw was a deformed man holding out a hand to be shaken. Yes, he was well dressed, but political instinct led him to wrap one arm around the man and smile expectantly. Where then was the flash of a camera? Where was this one-eared fellow's mother to perform keeper's duties? Would someone get this freak off me? The panicked way in which the previous MP for Dagenham had screamed that was imitated by at least 3 television programmes and was, ultimately, a large part of the end of the chap's career. Malcolm was a man of the people. His savvy publicist used phrases like "your cup of tea" and "everyone's got a favourite," because Mug had immediately stuck. and they needed it to be in the right way. And Malcolm, who the newspaper columnist deemed it worth not spending the extra words every time on, was swiftly moved from one-eared up-and-comer standing for Dagenham, Malcolm Thurridge, to Dagenham's own tea vessel, and soon enough, Dagger's mugman. His politics were simple and clean, and earned. Knife crime? Bad. Ear cut off. More police and surveillance, but specialised in gang crime. Like Brazil, people said a lot. Malcolm's team avoided comparing East London to a favela. Marijuana. Legalised. That was a big seller. He'd nearly died for someone else's 10 bag. Make it taxable, and us safe. The people didn't really understand that one MP cannot guarantee a change, and Malcolm the Mug Thorridge becomes an MP with a ludicrous landslide of votes. He does good work for some time, he stands his ground and makes a scene. What he lacks in ears, he has in balls, one paper says. The others manage to say it eloquently, but it's the balls he frames and hangs in his office. And Malcolm Thurridge is summoned to number 10, a fascinating prospect as he is on the opposition side, and he wasn't expecting it. The Prime Minister is sleazy. You can tell just from the things he chooses to keep in his office. A calendar of babes would hang in pride of place, if it could. But he greets Malcolm kindly. Your team does great work, fantastic ideas, excellent public speaking in spite of the old injury there. And his honeyed words, and the scotch that they drink, despite it being morning, fill up the mug. And soon he's discussing switching sides and inner circles, and the Prime Minister asks him if he can be trusted. Of course, he says, because he is ambitious. But Malcolm tells himself that he can fix it from within. But the Prime Minister is not malleable, not like Malcolm. And then he speaks those fateful words. There's no turning back now, if you want to be one of us. And did he want to be one of them? Or did he want to effect change? But Malcolm nods and the Prime Minister pushes something cold into his hand, and now the door has clicked behind him. And the last thing that the doe-eyed flatulent said to Malcolm rings in his ears. Welcome to the club, dear boy. You can never leave. And he laughed. But what was funny? And Malcolm finds himself in a room, and there, bound to a chair, a man somewhere near his age. He squirms in panic as he sees the entrant, but the bonds are far too strong. And even with the ravages of time, Malcolm remembers every detail of that face. And his hand closes tight around the object he was handed. And justice is rebranded in his addled mind. Because he can do anything he wants, so long as the Prime Minister's on his side. It does not take as long as one would hope it would to change the man. He cuts with gay abandon, and revels in the sport of hunting mankind's greatest foe, itself. He calls it, to himself, repayment for what had happened so long ago. For it's only right, is it not? An eye for an eye, an ear for an ear. What a mug.
The next instalment of the Prime Minister series.
He comes back. He has
back.
returned.
Yeah, nice work. Oh, a lot of fun. I giggled through almost the entirety of the middle of it. As soon as you said Dagger's Mugman, there was then just like a tide of excellent turns of phrase. The knife crime bad, ear cut off, fully got me, and he'd nearly died for someone else's 10 bag.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, that felt like you really hit your stride in the mid.
I definitely. Yeah. I think the if I was going to do it again, and it went through a few passes, and the narrator voice changes through it, and I couldn't find a way to have it sort of have that same feel in the middle. So I sort of settled on letting it transition into it as it became more surreal. But yeah, maybe like rewriting the whole thing, but try and have that narrator's voice all the way through would give it
Just a bit
even
of
more
something.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think potentially. I did think like I struggled a little bit with the passage of time from the opening to that
yeah,
midpoint. Um, and that may have just been me not paying close enough attention. But like it. You know, I was trying to follow it, and it felt like it was not meandering, but just like it sort of jumped quite suddenly.
yeah,
And there was a line that I thought might have been a better opening line that was just a bit deeper into the opening, which was Malcolm had never bought weed.
yeah. In
Uh,
fact, you're almost certainly immediately right.
yeah, and I was just thinking, like, you could really identify the fact that this is like because I think there's a little bit of like telling rather than showing at the start where
Yeah,
you're trying to establish what young Malcolm's like, but I think you can probably just do that in the bit where he gets his ear cut off, and then accelerate up into how that change how that shapes his life and into the political career, and then all of a sudden you're in the prime minister's office. Like I think that's potentially like it could just be a bit more streamlined in that regard. But it's a
yeah,
shame because you'd lose a lot of stuff from before that point. Like it'd been remarked that he looked like the FA Cup was hilarious. The idea
yeah,
of like throwing up a belly full of fish fingers is also really quite funny and horrid. Um, but yeah, you could move that like less of an idiot with age section to after the Malcolm had never bought weed thing, um, and maybe just have the looking like the FA Cup be something that the guy he gets revenge on says to him whilst
yeah,
he's carving his ear off. Um, yeah, loads of really good stuff, and I really enjoyed the essence of the story. But like the, I think the order needs to be tweaked a little bit just to make it actually just sing because it's all there. And
yeah.
as you say, like your narration voice in the middle is the heart of the story, and it'd be good to get that throughout. I think.
I think
But
I may
yeah,
even have done that to myself because it moved around. There's bits of it that moved around a lot as I was trying to make it line up better, and
mhm,
I think it landed in the best configuration at the end,
yeah,
which is it possibly would have been one that would be good to if we had infinite time to leave it for 6 months and then come back and go right what's not right here, what is right here. So it is, I mean, it's one of the real benefits of doing what we do, isn't it? That I
exactly,
can
yeah,
read someone who's never heard it and you can go, so this is good and here's what doesn't work.
hmm
And yeah,
yeah.
it's
I find workshopping to be incredibly useful, especially
yeah,
when you're trying to, because it feels a little bit like you got yourself into a position where you were overwriting,
yes,
which is really easy to do when you're editing, which I'm currently doing quite a lot of because I'm still working on my book that I've been working on for ages, but I'm really approaching it quite hard this time. And the other day, this happened to me, almost exactly this, where I just spent an entire day rewriting a section, and I got to the end, and then I read it through, and I was like, I think I need to cut 2,000 words of this
oh damn,
because it's not doing anything for me.
yeah,
It's not pushing the story. It's telling rather than showing the reader. It's too much of an info dump. And that left me feeling really disheartened, as you might imagine. But
yeah,
but at the end of the day, you've just got to like it's better to know that really than to not, and you can always move things around. And I think on a microcosm, on a smaller scale, I think this story could just benefit with just a little bit of like just take a step back, take a breather, and then
yeah,
see where the flow is because it's there. The content of that story is great, and I think there's some wicked turns of phrase, and I laughed out loud multiple times. And I really enjoyed the fact that it was the next in the Prime Minister series.
yeah,
um, yeah, just yeah. I think I think that's my feedback. I think like it's um it's always interesting, isn't it, when we do these kind of workshops on mic because this is the first time I've heard this, and
yeah,
um, I'm always left with this feeling of like, oh, it'd be lovely to just hear it after the edits now, like after the feedback from the workshop.
yeah. Well, we
And
can we can always do some more of those. We have done it before, and it's always
yeah, yeah,
I think it is a you know, pumping out words is something that eventually, if you practice it enough, you can just do. And I think that next skill that you're talking about, being able to look at 2,000 words and go, well, those have to go.
Mm.
That is the next and way more complicated skill set you need. Sort of the ability to let go of things you've done, and the ability to really understand in a grand scale how even one sentence can be massively important or unimportant, and being able to recognize the difference between the two is
Absolutely.
something
Yeah.
I know less about, and it's really cool to see you uh, like your voice in giving notes at the end of that. It's very clear that you've been doing loads of editing recently, because it was so concise and so sort of this bit specifically this bit specifically this. So
Mm.
it is something that you can sort of whetstone into an absolutely like surgical tool. So I'm looking forward to seeing
Mm. Yeah.
how you're going to be with me in a few months' time. Cut the whole thing, burn it to
Cut
the ground.
Just let it down. Yes. No, I think I have been quite savage with myself recently, so I think I'm trying to make sure that I'm still being, fair in it, because I got a bit overzealous with my cutting the other day, so I need to be a bit careful when I'm giving feedback to other people.
Hey, we
It-
we support zealotry in this house.
I've been doing quite a lot of reading around story structure and how to approach writing and stuff recently, which isn't not entirely sure I would recommend it to people that are trying to write or trying to edit.
Yeah,
Like, to do both at the same time is a bit discombobulating in a way. But there was one bit of advice that I um, really liked that I encountered, which was talking about like the order in which the order of importance in which you should be approaching your writing. And the first and the sort of least important bit, but still a major part, was to find out how stuff works, so that when you write about stuff, you don't look like a tit.
yeah,
And that's like the foundational. And then the next bit was like your judgment, your discriminatory intellect, like to know when there's a good idea and a bad idea, what to cut, what to leave.
yeah,
Then, of increasing importance, is then compassion, to like keep all of any character that you write, even if they're a heinous bad guy or a inconsequential side character. You have to feel compassion towards all of them.
yeah,
You have to be able to put yourself in their shoes, or they shouldn't be in the story,
yeah,
because that otherwise it just becomes like this like 2D cutout thing that you're doing. And then finally, it's just to keep going with things like that, kind of focusing your will to actually manifest the thing that's in your imagination into something that you can read out in this case, and trying
I
to keep all of that in line is
yeah.
the whole thing, I think.
I think it's ironically that fourth step that stops people so early on sometimes, isn't it?
Well,
That
it's really intoxicating to think about all the stories you could tell, all the books that you could write,
yeah,
and how great they would be. But if you actually don't ever just roll your sleeves up and get stuck in, then it won't happen.
yeah, it's especially it's really easy to get that endorphin hit, and every creative out there will know exactly what I mean. You tell someone, "I've got this idea for a story where it's they send three slugs into space and then they grow into men and they come back and they take it," and someone goes, "Whoa, that's a
Mm.
great idea," and then you get the endorphin hit from the idea being
Yeah,
good, and you can put it aside, but you can turn good ideas into great ideas with some effort. So just do it.
and actually make it so other people can read it, and people can enjoy the story and stuff.
Yeah,
It's the whole thing. It's the whole thing. But the reason I bring that up is because that idea of like, good idea, bad idea, the judgment call isn't actually the most important thing. Like, compassion is ranked above that.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, you've got to hold it all in your head whilst you're doing it, and it's quite difficult to go from being a more instinctive storyteller to being someone that's trying to actually, you know, put some structure in and make it work, and
yeah.
make it into like a repeatable thing that you can grow and expand. And like you said earlier about how you can just sharpen that blade. It's It's a whole thing. I feel like I've now bigged this up too much because I now need to read a story out.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's see how sharp your blade is, boy.
After all this theoretical nonsense that I've been spouting.
Just 9 words on the piece of paper you're holding. Me write story, very good story. Tell it now.
Mug. Part 1. Brian Adams. Note 1. A page of A4, carefully taped along all edges to the cupboard, bears size 20 font, which reads, "To the person who is using my work mug, please stop. You do not wash it up properly and it is not yours. My mug is black and has Kevin Costner's Robin Hood on it. My wife bought it for me because everything I do it for you, is our song. I have kept it safe for a long time and it means a great deal to me. We are allowed to have personal mugs. You should get your own. Today it was not in the cupboard, and I can only assume you have it on your desk or have taken it home accidentally. I want it back, or I will be forced to notify HR. If it is returned, cleaned, by lunch, then I will forget this ever happened. Thank you and best wishes, Bartholomew Higgins. Call me Barry." Note 2. A pink sticky on which the old glue is failing. Handwritten block capitals read, "Fuck your mug, Barry." Note 3. A plastic stand on the countertop contains a memo headed with the company logo and signed by HR. It reads, "To all employees, firstly, please refrain from placing unauthorized internal memorandums in the communal areas, as it has been brought to our attention that acts of passive aggression can cause serious workplace disharmony. Secondly, not only does the Buddha teach us to never use harsh words, but also company policy prohibits the use of foul language between colleagues. Instead, endeavour to earn the respect of your fellows with friendship." Note 4. Reeking of fresh toner, it is taped over Note 1. The message reads, "My mug is my personal property, and I was attempting to resolve it in an adult manner within this, our work community. I feel I must ask, how are notes now cancelled as well? Why are these snowflakes allowed to do whatever they want and not receive any rebuke? What is wrong with society that a person, a real human being, can't communicate politely with the written word and be listened to? I had thought a professional work environment would be the last place that I'd find..." Note 5. A pink sticky, with capitals engraved in the thin paper, covers the last portion of Note 4. It reads, "You're nothing, and I hope you get cuckolded." Part 2. The Buddha in the corner office. Barry, fists clenched, watched the surface of his milky tea ripple as his leg bounced uncontrollably under his desk. The borrowed mug was plain white, but for the signs of dishwasher stress at the lip. It was one of a million, washed, slurped at, then washed again, over and over, 1,000 different mouths guzzling from it. The only personality it conjured was of tiredness and overuse. Barry didn't like that. It was worse than looking in a mirror. He thought about all of the time he had spent sat in that cubicle. How many chairs had he worn through over the years? How many monitors, keyboards, and mice? His waist ballooned and his bank account grew thick. But outside of that cubicle, what had he achieved? Kids reared, wife loved, garden mown. Had it all been treading water? Did it mean anything to him anymore? Barry uncurled the fingers of his right hand and looked at the crumpled pink note. Cuckolded? What was it? The fucking Middle Ages? Barry felt his temper getting the better of him as he stood up. A uniform sea of cubicles stretched away from him in every direction. Balding heads bobbed around in them to the accompanying clack of on-the-clock typing. He wondered if they were all laughing at him, and wondered too which of them had done it. Cuckolded? Fucking cuckolded? "I am something," he whispered the mantra as he walked out of the labyrinth of cubicles and towards the big corner office. The plaque next to the open door read, "Harold Regis, HR, Devonshire District." Barry saw that HR's desk was decorated with the decapitated head of Buddha. The gilded bonce was no doubt of the variety some of his fancier neighbours, might buy at a garden centre to hide in their flower beds. It stared at him smugly. Come in, Barry. I think I might know what you're here about. The man stood and pointed to the empty seat in front of Buddha. Troubling, isn't it? I hope you didn't take it to heart. There's a lot of unhinged people in this place. HR showed all his teeth in a facsimile of a smile to indicate that he had finished talking. Barry felt his skin crawl as he took the offered seat. It is harassment. Barry had heard that word a lot in various training seminars over the decades he had held a white-collar job for. The shifting culture, as he saw it, meant that pretty much anything might be considered harassment nowadays. Yeah, yes, yeah, HR nodded, giving the illusion that he had been listening, though his eyes had glazed over. So, what are you going to do about it? Right, well, you will have seen the sternly worded memo that I put up. The one about no unauthorized memos. That's the one. But what about my mug? What is your memo going to do about that? Well, it's in a plastic stand, Barry. That's a permanent change you've encouraged. You should be proud. HR punctuated his words with a thumbs up. Barry shook his head and locked gazes with the Buddha instead. The immobile features somehow seemed more like a person than the disassociated marionette of HR. A glint of colour on the desk made Barry lean forwards. A pad of pink sticky notes were tucked behind the head. He narrowed his eyes. Are you not going to find who wrote those notes? Asked Barry, slyly. You know, Barry, witch hunts are frowned upon these days. I doubted it'd get much traction upstairs. HR pointed at the ceiling. Barry gritted his teeth. We're on the top floor. Isn't that great, Barry? HR stood up. Look, this has been a great chat, Barry, but I must get on. You would not believe the mountain of work I have today. Barry, deflated, stood to leave, but as he did so, he saw the black handle of a broken mug nestled amongst the rubbish in HR's bin. The slow-burning fuse finally met the payload behind his eyes. You crazy bastard! It was you, wasn't it? Cuckolded? Fucking cuckolded? Barry hefted the Buddha, arms burning with righteous strength. Well, fuck you, Harold! Part 3. Dear Bartholomew. A windowed envelope, torn along the licked line of glue, contains a single folded page. It reads, Dear Bartholomew, this letter serves to inform you that as of today, we will no longer require your services. We appreciated working with you over the past 30 years, but due to recent events, we will be terminating our employment contract with you and ejecting you from our pension scheme. In light of the nature of the circumstances of your termination, we will ship your personal effects, including your mug, which we found in the sink, to your home to preclude the need for you to ever return to the Devonshire office premises. Sincerely, HR.
That I, without a doubt, the most I've ever laughed at something you've written. Like without a second's hesitation. I was cackling like a mad bastard from the beginning. the the careful wording of the first note and then it dissolving into just clear anarchy had me fucking rolling, man. That was so good.
I'm glad. Thank you.
There's just so many little important details, like it being, from a movie in the 90s, so it's clearly well loved and been kept for such a long time, and just so much fun in that piece, so much anger at how what office lives are like. So, first of all, do you know I had a mug? I had a personal mug that I took to work. That was my. It was from a gaming store, and he couldn't get them anymore. And then one day it just vanished, and I'm pretty sure the cleaners dropped it, and it's just gone, just gone forever.
You
I'm
told
still
me this
angry about
happened to
it.
you. Are you Barry? Is
I am
this
Barry.
you're Barry? Everyone's Barry at
They,
some point, I think.
they said they hope that I get cuckolded. uh, the Oh, just there's so many good little phrases like gilded bonds when talking about
Yeah.
the
Funny.
Buddha.
Yeah.
The have you are you aware of a play called Black Comedy by Peter Shaffer?
No.
So it's a really cool play. It's all set during a power cut, but when there's lights on stage, the character is in complete darkness, and if they do something like turn on a torch, the lights go down, so you can
Oh,
only see
okay.
what the torch can see. It's really cool. But a huge plot point of it is that to make his flat look nicer, the main character has stolen a Buddha statue from his neighbor. And the big twist at the end, where everything kicks off, is that it gets smashed by accident.
Oh, oh no.
Um,
Oh,
it it's like it's considered like a great farce. So you have accidentally channeled an absolutely fantastic play, which you should take as a huge
oh,
compliment.
thank you.
Um,
Yeah.
oh god, does it? It's in a plastic stand that really rocked me. There's there's so much wit in it. It the concept of the story, yeah, really tight, really small, but considering that I'd say was it like 60% of it is done through documentation.
Yeah,
You've
like
got
paratext. Yeah.
yeah, like a letter at the end and a series of notes, and it just forms a fantastic sandwich. I'm really there's not a lot I can say about it other than that it was so perfectly my sense of humor that I didn't really have time to take notes in between pissing myself
Yeah.
laughing.
Oh, I'll take it. I'll take it. That was it was intended. It was targeting you, and it sounds like it landed, which is great. Did you feel like the sort of twist that the mug gets recovered and potentially was never stolen, and that it was all in his head, and he was? Do you feel like that landed, or how did you interpret the ending?
I it's an interesting one because I think it sort of gets lost a bit in the like in the grand narrative, but I think it's not important at the end. Like by the end, it isn't important anymore because he's fucked it up so
Because
hard.
yeah,
But
because
it's
he's lost
kind
his
of good that
apprentice. Yeah,
it's almost like an aside. It's like yeah, and it's right there. It was always there.
yeah, it's definitely an aside. Even as written, it's in parenthesis as well. So it's
Yeah.
like
So it's almost like it's one of those things where it almost didn't even land at first.
mm,
And then I was like, oh my god, it was nothing. It was nothing.
yeah,
But I think those kind of rug pulls are they're particularly effective when a story has been as funny as that is. So
mm,
it's yeah,
yeah,
it's handled correctly.
cool.
The what was I going to say? There's I don't know how you did it quite how you did, but there's a definite sensation of a ticking clock in that middle part. Like something about it made I could hear a like a ticking when he was
Mm,
looking at the mug that's been used over and over and over again, and it's got that that grey line that office mugs always get
yeah,
around the rim. But even that, but a really lovely description of the way that that those mugs in shared spaces aren't dirty technically, but they'll never be clean again.
yeah, they're ruined.
I I think it's yeah, it's very relatable in not in that like oh I could see myself doing that, but everyone has seen office drama sort of unfolding. It felt like going in to make my own coffee or whatever and seeing the that note on the cupboard and going oh shit this is gonna get good.
You go home at night and you're like, it really kicked off today at work.
Like babe, honestly, he
Barry
threw
went
a
postal.
Buddha.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
I'm telling you, Barry, he threw a Buddha.
yeah, that Barry, quiet Barry. Yeah.
No, well, only his head.
Oh God, that whole Buddha thing. Because there is so much wisdom to be found in other cultures and everything, but there is something so performative about how, in particular, I think like English people that get really into it do it.
Yeah,
Um, and this idea of it feels almost. like cheating to say that someone to like code someone as being a bit of a prick if they pretend to understand what they would call Eastern wisdom.
Yeah.
Um, rather than yeah, I don't know, and like the fact that it was like in that memo where he was like, the Buddha tells us not to give harsh words to each other, and also it's
Oh
company
god, that
policy
really
not
made me
to.
laugh.
That was one of the first things that I wrote, and I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, this is gonna work. Let's just
The
this character needs to be in here somewhere.
the you go one of two ways with people like that HR character, which is it's Siddhartha Gautama or it's Sun Tzu. So they've either got a Buddha or a copy of The Art of War. I
They
don't know
probably
which is worse.
they probably graduated from the Art of War first.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're gonna battle someone, make them come to your office. That's
Yeah. Uh, yeah, it was a lot of fun to write, and I
yeah,
enjoyed experimenting with the form as well, with the three sections. I was trying to make sure that I adhered to like a proper like narrative structure and try and like really tighten that that we've occasionally struggled with over the years. Like
yeah,
that's 1,200 words,
yeah.
so it's pretty much 400, and then it's not quite split into equal thirds, but like it's almost there.
But it is
And
balanced.
yeah,
Yeah,
and each part it tries to do what I intended it to do. It doesn't feel as like meandering as some of my stories have been recently. So I was pretty pleased with that one. But yeah, it's the kind of thing where I may well put this in a drawer and then come back to it and give it
yeah.
a read and see if I've see if I can add to it somewhere. But
I will give you one last compliment though,
yeah,
which is to
oh wow,
say
okay, cool.
part one, Brian Adams is, after we'd been talking about like the opening line possibly being deeper in and in the wrong place, it because I didn't know what you were going to read, I didn't know what kind of story it was going to be. It made me just sort of sit back in my chair and go, "Oh, what on earth is this going to be about?" And that's a nice feeling. It's nice when you get to just be kind of thrown for a loop immediately, and it really frees you up to just enjoy whatever comes next.
Yeah, it's sort of like it's almost like calling the shot, isn't it?
Yeah, like a disarming strike.
Yeah, just or just like heat checking and just being like this one's going over the fence. The that whole idea of a chapter name or a section name being used as like a tool for excitement for your reader
Yeah,
is something that I definitely got influenced by George Martin with because
yeah,
I, part of the joy of reading those books is getting to the end of a Sansa chapter and then when you turn the page of it and you see that it's going to be John, it's going to be Jamie, it's going to be,
yeah,
and you're like, oh shit, I don't think I can stop. Like, I need to see what happens for the character that I actually am really invested with. And
yeah,
one of the big ones in one of the later books is it's it's something like Queen's Guard or like the Old Man, or it's like an odd one, right? And then you
yeah.
realize that you're reading from Barristan Selmy's point of view in Game of Thrones, and you're
Uh,
like, shit, that's fucking. It's so cool realizing that you know the person and you have never had his POV before. Um, so I was sort of trying to evoke that kind of thing. I think where it's like you just sort of be like, what the fuck is this going to be? And
yeah,
then, the second one, the Buddha in the corner office. It sounds almost like an episode title or something.
I. So we've spoken before about writing cinematically. I think this would make an absolutely astonishing short film.
Yeah.
I but could really see it. Kind of, you'd need to go a bit Edgar Wright with it, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah.
But the like that ticking, have like the dripping of the tap in the kit. We'll talk about this. I think this is, and then we just got to work out how much it costs to get the rights for everything I do it for you.
What the one of the mega hits of the early 90s? Yeah, it might be
Yeah,
quite expensive.
a song that was number one in the charts for like 17 weeks. That one, yeah.
Yeah, that one. Right. It was
Ah,
actually the number one the day that I was born, as it was for most people in 91. But
yeah, that's fair.
yeah, it I think that's probably where it came from. I was like, I need to
Well,
age this up.
Sinead O'Connor's Nothing Compares to You. So
Both bangers. Both
there
bangers.
you go, yeah. Two absolute heaving monsters of songs.
Well, I'm really pleased with these. I think yours made me laugh. I enjoyed reading mine to you, and it sounds like it made you laugh as well. So
A lot.
I reckon we wrap this. I think we got it.
Right, come on. Let's find our own punchlines.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at The Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For rich ginger tones on their scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne. And for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?